absolutely love the discussions here. So let's get to one of the best running backs in the nation from one of the best that you faced last week. Okay, Will Shipley. And I know that you break down film for the high school guys and so forth, but I don't. I have to dive into the recruiting, but it's more about rankings and such. Because my perception of Will Shipley coming out of high school was cute back, in space kind of guy. No, he will beat on you. He's a tough kid. And how do you think that matchup looks for the Notre Dame defense right now?
Well, Notre Dame wanted Will Shipley bad. His final two schools were Notre Dame and Clemson, and for a while there, people thought Notre Dame was going to get him. And I think you nailed the misconception of him, and I think there's certain reasons why that perception was there. He's not a bigger back. He was more of a home run threat in high school, but that's just because he was so much better than everybody else he played. I think last year was a struggle for Will Shipley, and I think it was the best thing to ever happen to him. I do. Because he had to learn to grind out yards last year. In high school, he was running through big holes and he was just so much faster and more explosive than everybody else. He's never been in a situation where he had to, pound. And if there's only an inch, I got to take that inch, and you look at some of the games he had last year against Georgia Tech and NC State and even the Florida State game, which was, probably, in my opinion, his best game of the year. He had to learn to be an efficient player. He had to learn to be a physical player in ways that he never had. And I think this year it's made him such a better player because, you're starting to see last year you saw the physicality, the running back instincts shine. This year, now that the line is still not great, but certainly better than it was a year ago, now he's able to combine those two things together. You're seeing the home run ability as a kick returner. I mean, he broke the game open against Florida State in the second half, not with a run or a catch, but with a half opening kick return that then set up a touchdown the next play. Next thing you know, because if you go back and look at that game, Florida State ran for, I think it was like 123 yards in the first half against Florida State, maybe 132. They were running on him. But that play and then the touchdown that followed, all of a sudden it's 31-14. You've now taken Florida State out of their game plan. They can't be balanced, and that broke that game open. So you're seeing him still be able to pound out the tough yards, but that experience has made him a much better back, and as the talent around him has been better, I think Will Shipley is one of the better backs. We got asked today, would you take Will Shipley over Notre Dame's trio of backs? No, I wouldn't, because I'll take the 3 over the 1. But if it was a 1-for-1 trade, I think Will Shipley is one of the better backs in the country, and he's not getting enough credit, in my opinion, for the job he's doing as an all-around back, kick returner, pass catcher, runner, and he's improved as a pass blocker this year as well.
Yeah, you allude to last year's Florida State performance. Certainly he showed to be a man in that game. They could run the 4-minute offense because of him, and he just wore down the Florida State defense. Let's turn to the other component in this Clemson offense. Of course, unique connection between Notre Dame and DJ because, of course, he flashed in his 2 appearances, Boston College and then Notre Dame, in filling in for Trevor Lawrence and threw up the big 439 game, the largest number of yardage that Notre Dame's ever given up. Then, of course, he just craters last year, 9 TDs and 10 picks, about a 55% completion percentage. But a lot of that, and I watch a lot of Clemson football, the receiving core last year compared to what we're used to at Clemson were complete opposites. Offensive line, pass protection. Are we now getting somewhere in the middle of what DJ really is, do you think?
I think this is more who he is. I do. He wasn't the guy we saw. I mean, Notre Dame didn't have a lot of film on him. Clemson did a nice job that year of just not giving him a ton to do, let him use his big arm to throw the ball downfield. You had some stuff out of the backfield. I thought it was just one of those games where he was able to hit some big passes. You had a couple catch and runs to Amani Rogers, which allowed him to get some yak after the play. And then he hits a big shots down the field to Cornell Powell. Not only was the receiving core bad, but you had an offensive line that couldn't block anybody. And I felt like for some reason, Tony Elliott was trying to call a game like he still had Trevor Lawrence or Deshaun Watson. You're turning him into a lead runner. That's not DJ's game. He can be a complimentary runner. They're still running him this year, but not like they did last year. They were still trying to run an offense with fast after the catch receivers, but they didn't have fast after the catch receivers on the roster. You know, like you're trying to have Joseph Ngata and Bo Collins be T. Higgins and Justin Ross, and they're different players. I think this year we've seen them adjust more to the actual talent of the roster, using the tight ends a lot more this year, which has been a big part of it. Davis Allen, and I can never remember how to properly pronounce their backup tight ends name, but they've got like 35 catches for over 400 yards. I think that's added something really down the middle of the field. And then they're using Bo Collins and Joseph Ngata more appropriately, letting them be big 6'5" vertical players. You know, let them win the 50-50 balls. Let them be down the field players. And occasionally throw them a little quick screen to, you know, get some chunk yards. But I feel like they've somewhat better adapted to the unique talents of their players, where last year I felt like Tony Elliott was saying, well, this is our offense, and I don't care what your skill set is, this is what we're going to do. And it just wasn't effective. And so I do think this is more of who DJ is. He's never going to be I just don't think he's a natural passer, Mark. I don't think he has a real natural throwing motion. We were kind of discussing today, he's a former star baseball pitcher who threw like mid-90s in high school, and he throws a football like a pitcher. He's got a real long delivery. It's not a real clean. You know, it's not like this. It's a real awkward. He can't really speed his delivery up and still maintain good release point consistency. He's more of a really good athlete that throws really hard and fast than he is a natural quarterback. And so he's always going to have some issues with consistency when you can pressure him or get him out of rhythm and do all those type of things. But if he can sit back in a clean pocket, it's going to be a thing of beauty, because the kid has a phenomenal arm strength. I just don't think he has, I'll say, elite arm strength, not elite arm talent. And I think there's a difference. And that's the thing that's going to always keep DJ, in my opinion, from ever being the guy that people thought he was going to be.
Absolutely. Put him out there in shorts, let him check at 65 yards versus, you know, when you start talking about it, we see it on display with the Aaron Rodgers of the world on Sunday with, you know, knowing exactly what type of arc to put on it, trajectory, angles, the whole deal. It's crazy. Yep. What those kind of guys can do.
Here's my thoughts on DJ. I'll say this, Mark. If, let's just say hypothetically, they tell him Cade Klubnik's going to be our starter next year and DJ decides to transfer. The thing I'll tell him is, dude, go to Wisconsin or Iowa. Because, like, that's your wheelhouse. Play action, shots down the field, pro style, sitting deep in the pocket, getting the ball out. You don't have to be this quick spread guy that's throwing RPOs and stuff that you're not really good at. Go to a pro style system like a Wisconsin, like an Iowa, and you're going to be a really good football player, because that's the kind of player he is. He's not a shotgun spread, get the ball out all over the place, throw off platform, speed up your motion, all that kind of stuff. That's not who he is. There's offenses I think DJ could be a much better player. I just think he's a great fit for the Clemson offense. That's just kind of my 2 cents on it.
And in his best interest, I would definitely mention Wisconsin before Iowa, I think.
Well, I feel like, you know, if Iowa had a quarterback that could complete a pass, they wouldn't be that bad, you know, and maybe Charlie Jones still stays there and he's doing well. But yes, you are correct. Wisconsin would be like in Iowa. How about that? Right.
There you go.
You know, a system where he can be more of a pro style, you know, Michigan back in the day, like, you know, under Lloyd Carr, like that kind of vertical downfield play action off of the run game kind of system is where I think he would thrive.
Brian Driscoll, Irish Breakdown. Get there. Notre Dame taking on Clemson. Let's flip to the other side of the ball. So it sounded like you said something off the top that I'm certainly in the same category of in reviewing this Clemson defense. Shoot, whatever they've got, 5 or 6 NFL players along the defensive front, but they're not a dominant group, or haven't been to date. Certainly, Sam Hartman showed us that. But even beyond that, every game, Florida State almost came back. NC State was probably Clemson's most dominant, complete game start to finish against a quality opponent, and certainly NC State's limited. So where do you think the keys are, Notre Dame, Drew Pine versus this Clemson defense?
You've got to do something on the perimeter. So, like, if you look at this Clemson front seven, the thing that separates them from some of their past units is they're just not, you know, they're just not the dominant, just blow up the pass rush kind of team. Now, what I do think is their pass rush is getting better. At least their sack production has certainly improved the last 4 games. But, you know, like, they're a bunch of power players, right? I mean, Brian Bresee is a power player. Tyler Davis is a power player. Miles Murphy's a power player. They're not those twitchy edge guys. I mean, you got Xavier Thomas can do that. KJ Henry has a little bit of that to him, but they're more of a power. They use them as power, which is why they're so good against the run. Outside of the Florida State game, nobody's run on Clemson this year. And so you kind of chalk that up to a little bit of an anomaly. They're really good in power football. Well, against Notre Dame, that matches up really well with what Notre Dame is. They're not going to be able to bully Clemson the way they bullied Syracuse, where, Syracuse has got a 5'11", 255-pound nose guard, a 6'4", 258-pound end, and then a 6'4", 219-pound end. And then their best linebacker, Michael Jones, who I love as a college player, is like 220 pounds. They were a small, quick, undersized line that Notre Dame just bullied. You're not bullying Clemson. So if you're going to have the success you need offensively, you've got to figure out ways to get the ball to the perimeter. You just can't line up in 12 and 13 and run duo and inside zone and counter all day and expect to beat Clemson. You have to be able to find ways to get the ball in the perimeter, whether it's quick passing game, quick runs. I don't know if running left to right with like jet sweeps and stuff like that is what you want to do against Barrett Carter and Trenton Simpson at linebacker. But some stuff where you're quickly getting the ball out, running some RPOs. But at the end of the day, Mark, it's going to be about, can you take some shots and hit some shots downfield? Clemson's coaches aren't stupid. They're going to say, how do you beat Notre Dame? Well, don't let their running backs and Michael Mayer beat you. And so load the box and don't, say, hey, if you're going to beat us, you're going to have to beat us with Drew Pine throwing to Lorenzo Styles and Braden Lindsey and Tobias Merriweather, because I don't think you can beat us that way. I know you can beat us by running the ball down our throat. You're going to have to beat us with something on the perimeter. And so if Notre Dame's going to win, they're going to have to be able to hit some shots down the field, have to be able to scheme up some ways to get some ISOs that work in their favor. And the big thing is, and we were talking about this on our show, Mark, here's a crazy stat for you. Notre Dame's 5-man rotation and safety this year has given up 312 passing yards, according to Pro Football Focus. Clemson's 4-man safety rotation has given up 695 passing yards this year. That's a matchup Notre Dame has to find ways to exploit. And if you look at how Notre Dame's had success this year, it's been some of those matchups. It's up the seams against BYU and North Carolina. It's Tobias Merriweather with a post route from the slot for a touchdown against Stanford. So they're going to have to find some ways to isolate their top receivers and Michael Mayer against the Clemson safeties. If you can do that, maybe hit 4 or 5 shots, that might soften Clemson up enough to where your run game can get going. That sounds easy, but if you've watched Notre Dame's pass offense the last 3 weeks, that's not an easy thing for them to do at this point in time, Mark.
Well, yeah, this was a key point that we talked about before the Ohio State game and throughout the offseason with you, was the wide receiver position, minus Avery Davis. Then the 3 guys that you just mentioned, good players, capable players, but trying to find a number one or a guy that can take the top off the defense. Those aren't necessarily the same thing. So have they shown glimpses, or is there one guy that's standing out a little bit more?
Oh, all year. That's the frustrating thing, Mark. If you and I sat down and I could show you the all-22 film, I would say, but good Lord, if they had a quarterback, this team's scoring 40 a game. I mean, there's guys open deep constantly. They're just not getting the ball, or they miss. You look at the Marshall game. Last play, the second to last play of the second quarter, Braden Lindsey's 7-8 yards behind the defense on what should have been a 75-yard touchdown, and the quarterback just misses them. Fourth quarter, they're up 15-12. It looks like they're going to put the game away. Just run a simple hitch, go, read. If the guy stays up, you run by him. If he bails, you throw a hitch. Guy comes up, Braden Lindsey runs by him. Should be an easy walk-in touchdown. Quarterback throws it into the sidelines. That's been Ohio State. They had 2 deep shots opportunity in the second and third quarter against Ohio State that could have gone for big plays, maybe touchdowns. And on one play, the quarterback overthrows Lorenzo Styles, who had a guy beat by 2-3 steps. And the other one, he never gets time to throw. He gets sacked. I think Tommy Eichenberg sacked him, and he never got that chance. That's been every single game where they've got guys coming open 3-4 times. Against UNLV, there was 2 or 3 plays where guys are just open. They just run by guys. And the quarterback's either off target or he doesn't throw it. So if you were able to watch the non-TV film, you'd say these kids are getting open a lot. They're just not throwing them the football. And that's been the maddening thing about this, because it's the same thing week after week after week, and nothing changes. If that light goes on for Drew Pine and he starts throwing and hitting those shots, then this Notre Dame team has a chance to finish very strong, especially against a secondary at Clemson that's just not nearly as good as the one. I mean, 2018, they had, AJ Terrell, Trayvon Mullen. You had Isaiah Simmons playing some kind of a hybrid safety role. You had, that was a team like that. Those are pros, Kayvon Wallace, and then Tanner Muse, who was a draft pick. And now you look at their talent, it's like, this is not the same group of dudes. Even back in 2015, Mackenzie Alexander at corner, you had Jaron Kearse, TJ Green was the second round pick at safety. They don't have the secondary talent to match the front seven talent. And Notre Dame's going to have to find a way to exploit it. Will it happen? I don't know. I'm beyond predicting it, Mark, because it's just kind of like you see something happen over and over and you keep predicting this is going to be the week. And then now I look like an idiot because you keep predicting that this is going to be the week. But guys are there. The receiver room isn't the problem a lot of people think it is. End of the day, Mark, they can't throw the ball to themselves. They need somebody to throw it to them.
Brian, another storyline narrative, I should say, more so that I've caught on your podcast with your guys would be not necessarily feeling that this coaching staff's doing a great job all the time in every area. What would be your evaluation after 8 games?
Well, I think my biggest issue is really from a coordinator concerns that I have. And I think the issue is I've said, and I'm sure you've heard me say this, the problem is Notre Dame has 2 coordinators that are more focused on showing everybody else how smart they are, as opposed to being what I think good coordinators are, which is make sure that whatever you're doing, your kids can run and can execute it at an elite level. You keep hearing Coach Freeman talk about, well, we didn't execute. And it may sound like coach speak, but if I were to sit down and watch the film with you, you'd be like, wow, this team should – if they could just execute some of the basic stuff, they're at worst 7-1 right now. I mean, it's that frustrating. And so, but part of it is why is that happening week after week after week? Because your players don't have the basics down, right? They're doing a lot of different things. You're asking them to do this one week. It's a pass-oriented game plan this week. You change things up. Notre Dame's more NFL in how they go about their business than they are college. What Coach Freeman did after the Stanford loss is he sat down. From what I was told, he sat down with his coordinators and said, we need to scale this stuff back. We're putting too much on these kids' plates. They're not playing fast. We're having all these kids on defense regressing from where they were last year. We've got to scale back and find that happy medium between having enough volume to be able to go out and scheme people, but also not so much that our kids aren't playing fast. And since then on defense, we've seen them outside of 2 or 3 plays here and there be much more effective in that regard and play at a pretty high level the last couple of weeks. And I think that was really a key. If they can build on that, then that's going to be the success. But that's been the issue, Mark, is stop trying to show everyone how smart you are X's and O's wise. Start saying, hey, here's what my kids do well. We're going to let them – it's going to be about them. Let them go out and play. And I think that's what you see at Tennessee. That's what you see at a lot of the schools that are kind of up and coming. Tennessee doesn't run a million plays. But what they do really well, and they play confidently. Now, look, Notre Dame doesn't have Hendon Hooker. But who thought Hendon Hooker was Hendon Hooker when he transferred to Tennessee? Nobody did. Couldn't beat out Quincy Patterson at Virginia Tech, and he got beat out by Joe Milton at Tennessee. Now, I think both of those were mistakes by those coaching staffs, but you get my point. It's kind of like Joe Burrow. Nobody thought Joe Burrow was going to be Joe Burrow going into 2019. He wasn't that guy in 2018. But you had a coaching staff that said, we're going to put these kids in position to be successful, and it's going to be more about them than it is about us, and then we're going to be aggressive with it, and we're going to go out and be successful. Notre Dame hasn't done that on offense this year, and now they're just resorting to just our O-line's better than whoever we're playing against, and we're just going to bully you. And that's worked last couple of games, but it's not going to work if you want to beat Clemson and beat USC. You're going to have to protect the O-line with some of that other stuff, and that's the big unknown about if this team is capable of doing that or not.
We got Brian Driscoll here from Irish Breakdown. Please get there because this is the place to be for Notre Dame football talk. irishbreakdown.com. The YouTube is right here as well with Irish Breakdown. Just search it and you will find Brian and the rest of the guys.